hello to episode 3 of the Buckeye Fever podcast. I'm Dave Holmes. Buckeyes have the week off, but we do not. As we get ready for the bye week, Tyvis Powell, former national champ, will join us in just a minute. We're going to celebrate the 10-year anniversary of that 2014 championship team. We're going game by game in 20 minutes to get Tyvis's, the first thought when we go every single game of that season, going to be a psych exam. Tyvis is going to have a lot of fun with us in just a minute. But first, I do want to talk about the win over Western Michigan, 56-0. And the easy thing to do is to roll your eyes and say, yeah, it's Western Michigan. And I get it. But if you're going to be the type of Buckeye fan who melts down when you're only up 7-3 against Akron at the end of the first, then it's only fair to celebrate when you handle your business and beat the Broncos 56-0. First shutout in 5 years. And we're going to talk more about the defense at the end of the show. But let's hit the offense right off the get-go. Last week, I went on a rant against a man with an ostrich name on Twitter. And it was childish. I spiked the football. He said that Jeremiah Smith's not going to break records. I said, au contraire. Now Jeremiah, the teenager, 5 for 119 and a touchdown. That take is dead. It's buried. We are claiming a victory. And as much as I don't want this to turn into a weekly victory lap, let's tap dance a little bit. Because also on last week's show, I said Quinshon Judkins' breakout game was loading. And it happened. 9 carries, 108 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Quinshon Judkins has arrived. He looks shifty. And if I'm taking something good away from this game, the O-line and the running game was there. We have now seen the ceiling on this Ohio State football team. As Denny Green would say, they are who we thought they were. So we've seen the good Buckeyes. If we're going to say why the slow start against Akron, it's only fair to say congrats on handling your business against Western Michigan. 2-0 against the MAC. The Buckeyes are 6 MAC wins away from locking up a spot at the Motor City Bowl at Ford Field in Detroit. This team would win the MAC, folks. And I think they're so good they're going to win the Big Ten as well. Good week for the Buckeyes. I hate that the bye week comes so early after 2 easy wins. It is what it is. It's a long season, 2 bye weeks. The bottom line is they're 2-0, and we have now seen the potential of this team. We have Tyvis Powell recapping the 2014 championship coming up right after this. Well, it is the 2024 football season. That means big time anniversary, the 10-year anniversary of that 2014 team that won the national championship. And I'm one of the key players from that team, Mr. Tyvis Powell, former defensive back. How's it going, Tyvis?
You know what? It's going well. I can't believe it's been 10 years.
You know I'm old, but you're starting to get there with me now.
You know, when you hit 30, the body starts to ache a little bit more. I think I'm getting arthritis in my elbow. It's starting to catch up, and it's not funny.
Well, it's a podcast. They can't see. You're in better shape than I am. I can promise you that. Let's do this. I want to try to run through the entire 2014 season and just get like a quick recap to any memories you have. You down?
Let's go.
All right. First week, you beat Navy 34-17. What do you remember?
I remember preparing for that Navy game all training camp. Obviously, they do that freaking wing tee that I hate so much. But I had 16 tackles in that game. I remember actually preparing for that game. Terry McLaurin was on scout team. He was the best cutter I've ever seen in my life. Listen, I was able to defeat everybody's cut block. I could not stop him from cutting me. He was that good. And it actually prepared me for that game. I think they only threw the ball like maybe once in that game. So it was boring, but I was ready to tackle.
You don't feel bad about beating up on our military? That's kind of anti-American, right?
No, not at all. I mean, I think it was, you get out there on the field. I had my mind made up of what I was prepared to do because that was the only game in my college career that I did not wear gloves. I wore finger tape. Tape my finger because I knew they wasn't throwing the ball, Dave. So why do I need gloves? I had my fingers taped.
All right. Tyvis Powell, anti-military. That's all I heard. All right. So we go to the second game. Speaking of beatdowns, what happens week 2? You guys get smoked 35-21 against Vodtech. Now, I understand.
Wait a minute. You going to rephrase that, okay?
Virginia Tech snuck out a 14-point win on a last-second 14-point play. So what do you remember? I mean, it was tough because you guys lose Braxton right as the season gets going. I mean, JT's trying to find himself. What do you remember about that ugly day against Vodtech?
I mean, I just remember that they were really getting some stuff on offense for us. Defensively, we had to pull things together. And they said it was going to be a challenge. I remember them saying that a lot of teams lose their next game after playing the Navy because it's such a different offense that you kind of lose the flow of a regular style offense. And I just remember we were out of sync. I mean, we were giving up stuff that we never give up. I gave up a 7 route to a tight end that probably ran a 5.2. And I'm just sitting there like, what is wrong with me? So we just wasn't in sync defensively, and offensively, it looked like something they never seen. It was like Coach Herman didn't prepare them properly for what they were about to see. Because it seemed like when they came out in that bare front, they didn't know how to handle it. They didn't know how to pick up the blitzes and stuff like that. So it was overwhelming. And then defensively, us not showing up, the thing at Ohio State is if the offense isn't working, usually the defense is, or vice versa. And that was just a game where neither one of us came to play, and obviously the results showed that.
I'll keep it real with you. After that game, I think you guys are headed to the Gator Bowl. And as we find out later on, that's clearly not the case. So week 3, you guys are angry after the Vatech loss, so you decide to take it out on my Kent State Golden Flashes, 66-0.
Yeah.
Tyvis, come on. That's my alma mater. What are you doing?
You got to have some redemption there. At this point, everybody's thinking like you're thinking. We're headed to the Gator Bowl. The season's over. You lose one game in major college football back then, it's like you're out of it, especially coming off of the BCS, and this is the first year of the CFP, so you kind of don't know. You think it goes the same, and I just remember we gotta just go out there and have statement games every game. We gotta look dominant from this point out, and obviously you go up against Kent State. You get that. And I had a pick in that game. Very controversial interception because I don't know if I had a foot down, but the referee said I had it. So therefore, the stat book says I got an interception.
If it's in the box score, it happened. So speaking of style points, next week you beat Cincinnati 50-28. Cincinnati, they weren't great back then, right? This is before they kind of got good.
They weren't Luke Fickell great,
right?
But they had Gunnar Kiel, who was a great quarterback, then they had Chris Moore, who had freaking mad numbers on us. He had 3 catches for 3 touchdowns, I think 200 yards.
That's that Randy Moss me.
Yeah, I was the only one that he did not score on. I think he scored on everybody in the secondary but me, and I was waiting, Dave. I was like, don't even come over here because it's not happening.
So it's time to open the Big Ten season, week 5. You go to Maryland and win 52-24. At this point, you're probably starting to think, you know what? Maybe we're not the team that we were against Vatech.
Yeah, I mean, that game was funny because when we got to Maryland, this is the first time that I seen Coach Meyer upset. Like really, really upset by fans. Fans got to him that game.
Maryland fans.
Well,
I thought that was an oxymoron. I didn't think there was such thing as Maryland fans.
Exactly. But you get to a stadium, there's not going to be a lot of juice because Maryland's not like that. And I remember getting off the bus. I'm like in the front of the line and I'm kind of behind Coach Meyer. And the student section is cheering, overrated. And he got in the locker, he said, we're overrated. Oh, forget that, boys. We're going tonight. And I'm just like, that got you upset?
Like, really?
Yeah, so it was a good game. Obviously, I got to see Coach Meyer fired up and everybody started clicking, and it was good to get that first Big Ten win.
Next week, you moved to 2-0 in the Big Ten, 56-17 over Rutgers. I mean, it was the annual beatdown over Rutgers. The poor Scarlet Knights, man.
Yeah, I broke my wrist that game. So
doing it how?
So the funny story is I broke my wrist the season before, 2013, against Cal. It was this tight end that was coming out the stalk block, and I hit him, and I just broke it.
You're Mr. Glass.
Yeah, unfortunately. But I didn't come out the game. If you watch the game, you'll never know that I broke my wrist. Nice. Fast forward to a year later, I get the surgery and I get the screw put in my wrist, and they say, Tyvis, there's no way that you can break your wrist again. You got the screw in it. You're good to go.
Then you're Usher. Watch me.
Watch this. Watch this. Right. Go right out there. I think, if I remember correctly, Rutgers either broke a long run or some play happened where they got down to like the 2-yard line. And I made the tackle. And when I made the tackle, I landed on my wrist and I broke it. So I get up and I say, yeah, I broke this, but I'm not coming out the game because they're on the goal line. Like, I'm not coming out the game. So I play the rest of the game with the wrist broke. And I come to the sideline. I say, I broke my wrist. They said, well, check it at halftime. And then they said, yeah, you broke it. So I taped it, finished the game, and we won 56-17. Nobody even knew that I broke my wrist.
Week 7's funny because this is the game everyone forgets because you go to Happy Valley. You beat Penn State 31-24 in double overtime. And you look back on it and you say, of course, Penn State's a tough place. The Penn State team you played went 6-6 that year and they played in the New Era Pinstripe Bowl. So what happened? If you guys lose that, this whole story never happens. You are not a guest on the Football Fever podcast if that happens.
Well, this is why I'll say that Happy Valley is probably the best atmosphere in the Big Ten. Their fan base and the way they create a game day is unbelievable. I mean, from blowing the air horns at 6 a.m. to wake you up, to getting to the game and hearing fans say the craziest things to you, to getting out to the whiteout and seeing nothing but white and seeing this white stringy stuff just flying in the air.
Yeah, they got that confetti or whatever it is. Whatever
it is, it's flying in the air. And, obviously they're literally right outside your locker room. So as soon as you step foot, like, the mosh pit is right there. They're ready to talk crazy to you. And I remember getting on that field, and that was the first time in my college career where I just wasn't me. You could tell, like, I was different. Like, you could see it in my eyes. Like, I was not Tyvis. I was this possessed dude. And I'm like, this is what college football is about. They get you riled up. And they were ready to play. I mean, they were really ready to play, and they really fought hard for their fans. And I remember I think we went out early, and we kind of just hit the relax button, and they started to come back, and then obviously they tied it up. But that was the first game where I realized that this team was special. I realized that this team refuses to lose, because up until this point, the only time we had a chance to potentially lose a game was when we lost to Virginia Tech. So we hadn't been in this situation where
you hadn't been tested in 5 or 6 weeks.
Yeah, our back haven't been against the wall. Yeah. And I found out that this team refuses to lose. They're not going to quit. They're going to find a way to win the game no matter what it takes. I remember JT messed his knee up in that game at some point where he was not supposed to continue to play. And on top of that, he couldn't run. And if you go back and watch that game, I think to send it into overtime or something, he ends up running the ball in to score the touchdown where he physically couldn't do it. And I was like, this team is special. Like, he was willing to put that on the line just for us to win a game. And after we won that game, obviously Joey gets the walk-off sack. I was like, yeah, well, we can do it with this team. This team is special.
Yeah, you were right, too. You beat Illinois the next week 55-14. I'm guessing that's a largely forgettable game. Do you remember anything about that beatdown against the Illini?
Yeah, I do. It was at home, right?
Yeah.
I hit this running back and knocked the ball.
Oh, you got a forced fumble, a little
forced fumble in that game, and Vaughn scooped it up. I remember that because it was like one of those things where he was like, when you're the post safety, you usually get to the pile at the end. And my coach was harping on, like, you got to throw it in there. Stop jumping on the pile. Just throw your shoulder in there. And I was like, all right, watch this. I got something for you. And I go in there and I throw the shoulder in there and he fumbles the ball. I was like, man, I should have been doing this all year.
and then you have the tough stretch. The next 2 games is where you also keep the season together. You had back-to-back road games at Michigan State, who was ranked 8th at the time, and then at Minnesota, who was a sneaky good team. You almost, I'm not saying you almost lost to the Gophers, but you beat them by 7. So those back-to-back road games, those were tough games against ranked teams.
Yeah, so Michigan State at that time when I was playing, they was like the Achilles heel of us. Like
they were Urban's kryptonite.
Yeah, they were a thorn in our side.
They were the team up north in many ways for that era.
Yeah, I agree. And I remember that week, in that game, it was a point at that time in that game where I thought we might not win. And I couldn't believe I was saying this to myself. That I actually literally had this thought on my mind. It was, I think Connor Cook maybe tried to run the ball towards the goal line. And I remember we were all hitting, and the pile got pushed, and they pushed us back to get him forward. He didn't score on the play. I think he got to the 1-yard line. But I was at the bottom of the pile, and I'm laying there like, I don't think we might win. It felt like they wanted it more than us at that point. And before, obviously, as the season was playing before this game, we always was the hungrier team. And at that moment, I was like, man, I think they might want it more than us. And luckily, our offense really started clicking because their offense was good. They were a very physical team. Jeremy Langford was probably the hardest running back I've ever went against in college. I mean, that guy was tough to bring down to the ground. And luckily our offense started clicking. Mike Thomas made plays. Devin Smith started getting bombs. Dontre Wilson had a touchdown in that game. So the offense really bailed us out on that one.
It's here. The new edition of the Football Fever 2024. This game is unreal. Check out these new features. It's not just game day stuff. It's a ton of fun loaded with all your favorite Buckeye traditions. It even has Dynasty mode. Whoa. Now check out this team. the veteran quarterback, surrounded by an all-star cast to break it all down. It's the only game you need this year. The Football Fever 2024. It's the perfect play. Saturday morning at 11 on ABC 6. At Minnesota, number 25 the next week. You win by a touchdown. I mean, Minnesota was pretty good that year, though.
No, my goodness. That was the coldest game I've ever played.
Minnesota's brutal, man. I've only been there once, and it was the year they opened the season, so it was like 73 degrees. So I've never seen bad Minnesota.
It was snow. I played the whole game squinting my eyes. Like, I couldn't see anything in that game. And like all you thought, you've never been more motivated to get off the field. Like as a defense, because the sideline, they got the blowtorch over there. The benches is heated.
Three and out to the heater.
The jackets. I'm like, listen, we ain't got time to mess around. We got to get off the field in 3. But they had a really good running back. David Cobb, I think was his name. Yeah. The funny thing is, leading up to that game, I had separated my shoulder. I had man, we was doing tackling drill in practice, and I landed on my shoulder, and I separated my shoulder. So from that game all the way to the end of the season, I had to get the shot in my shoulder, shot of cortisone in my shoulder just to be able to play. And I remember I ran into David Cobb. He was running the ball, and me and him was one-on-one. And this man ran through my bad shoulder so bad that I was like, you got it. You got it. I can't do nothing with you right now. You got it. But luckily we ended up winning that game. But he was a really good running back. I would say he was probably the 3rd best running back in the Big Ten that year.
Game 11. This is the classic trap game that week before Michigan. You beat Indiana, though, 42-27. And now you know that you're going to play your rival and everything is on the table.
Yeah, the Indiana game was, Indiana always have like secret, sneaky talent. Like they got some sneaky good player there that you might not have thought of or you might overlook. But luckily we was able to, do some special things. I think that was the Jalen Marshall game where he started going crazy. I think he had a punt return and a touchdown. And I think he had 2 touchdowns. Yeah. He did everything in that game. So it was a big game for him, but we was able to get out of that one too.
All right. The next week you beat the Michigan Wolverines, TTUN, 42-28. But it's not all good news because the injury happens to JT Barrett. So when you're in that locker room afterwards, I mean, are we celebrating? Are we terrified? I mean, what's going on?
So I was in a different position because obviously I know JT and Cardale is my roommate. So
and your son.
Yes, and my son. I am so devastated for JT because, like I said, this is the guy that put it all on the line in Penn State. This is the guy that gives you a speech at the beginning of a game that gets you ready to run through a brick wall. He was special. That offense went as he went, and it was such a major blow. I mean, dude was like in the Heisman race. So it was so tough. We just lost a guy who should have probably won the Heisman if he played. Now we losing the next guy. But the 3rd string quarterback, Cardale, see, it's different because I know him and I know what he's capable of. So I'm like, at the end of the day, Cardale can throw the football. No matter what happens, no matter if you tell him to run the ball, no matter what, at the end of the day, if you give him a clean pocket, he can throw the ball better than anybody I've ever seen. Because he has a laser. Like the dude stuff, is gone. Yeah. So I was like, you know what? We're good. And it's funny because we got a picture. Somebody snapped a picture of me and Cardale after that game. We walking off the field and we smiling and laughing after the game because we laughing at something he said that he had going on in the game. He said he had the jitters or something. I asked him, why didn't he get the 4th and 1? He said, I had some jitters, so that's why I didn't get it. And I was laughing at him. But if you see the picture, you'll see that it's 2 guys having a good time after a game like that. And I remember just starting in Cardale, we trust. In 12, we trust. We good. And yeah, I was solid. I was good with Cardale being the starter.
So you go to the Big Ten championship game. You play Wisconsin to the tune of 59-0.
Yeah.
Going into that game, does Urban tell you, like, I hate the idea of style points, but you guys had to know that you probably still had to show out in this one. I mean, did Urban basically say, like, we're going to step on their throat and not let up?
That's not what that's not what he said. Obviously, Urban had the same speech. He was already upset that we were the underdogs. So that was the big thing. Like, we're underdogs, us, Ohio State underdogs. So that was the thing. And he looked at it like it was a perfect opportunity. Wisconsin, I think at that time, had a top defense in the country.
They did.
They were ranked. So it was like, this is a chance to really put your foot on the gas and show that you belong because looking at the CFP, they're going to look at it like, well, they lost their potential Heisman quarterback. There's no way that we're going to put them in there over TCU, who TCU's resume looks pretty good. It looks pretty identical to the one that we had.
Right now, Florida State fans are hearing this and thinking about what happened last year to them. They lose their quarterback, and they said, no way.
Right. So we knew as a defense, don't get me wrong, Cardale's my roommate, love him to death, but I don't know what he's going to be like with a full game. I don't. He just told me he had the jitters on 4th and 1, so I don't know what he's going to do over a full game.
On 1st and 10.
I think I know, but I'm not 100% sure. Defensively, we all said we got to lock in. We got to get Cardale the ball back as much as possible, because the more you get it to him, the more comfortable he'll get with the game. And Lord behold, he goes down there and boom, he scores. Yeah. So the defense goes and forces a 3 and out. Give him the ball back. Boom, he scores again. So, okay. So we're going to force another turnover. Boom, he scores again. I'm like, okay, well, let's just keep this going. And he's hot right now. So it just worked out in our favor. And luckily, they came up with a really good game plan. You know, they said that Wisconsin was really good inside the hashes. So we're going to play this game with the ball being thrown outside the hashes, one-on-one outside. Any pass that Cardale throws has to be outside the hashes to make it a one-on-one thing. And Devin Smith just was on another level. You know, the biggest difference between Cardale and JT was the arm. You know, those guys in practice, when working with Cardale, they had some hamstring injuries because Cardale was throwing the ball and they had to go get it, to where JT kind of put it right there or maybe underthrown it a little bit. But with Cardale, they had to physically run for it. So it was perfect for a guy like Devin Smith to show his versatility, show how good he can be as a deep ball threat, and he made a really good game.
Cardale and Devin Smith were the perfect skill set match at that time. And I mean, 42-35, that Sugar Bowl win.
I feel bad because it should have been 42-28, but I'll tell you about that. I mean, when you think about this was in college. While I was in college, the only thing you heard about was Alabama or the SEC this, Alabama's this, you know, so you finally get a chance to play these guys and, you know, you watch the tape. And, you know, the first time you see them, it's like, all right, it's Alabama. They got some good players. But as you continue to dissect the film, it's like, okay, they're not that much better than us. You know, people talk about all this SEC speed, and then you look on Ohio State, you got Devin Smith, you got Dontre Wilson, you got Jalen Marshall. Like, we got speed too. Like, I've dealt with speed, so that's not going to bother me. But it was the first game in my college career where the guy across from me was as good or maybe even better than me that I was going against. So I knew, and we all knew, that we had to bring it every play. Their strength program is just as good as our strength program. Their coaching is as good as our coaching. So it's really about who makes mistakes and who don't, you know, and it was so good to see my guys answer the bell. You know, these guys back down from nobody. Whoever it was, everybody came together and made those plays that was meant to be made. And when it got down to the end, you know, we went up. We were down at halftime. I remember we was killing them in the stats, though. It was like Coach Meyer was like, we're killing them statistically. Y'all
look
just
better.
Like, y'all got to keep holding on defense. Y'all get some stops. This offense is going to start scoring touchdowns because they got down there and they kicked 2 field goals. But they could get down the field easily. So it's like, y'all got to hold on. We got to figure this red zone out, but we're going to be good. It was the best motivation I've ever seen. Nobody had their head down. Everybody was like, we got them. We are good enough to win this game. And Lord and behold, we go out there second half, offense start clicking. I remember Coach Ash said we need 3 interceptions to win this game. 3. And we got all 3. Steve Miller got 1, Vaughn got 1, and then I got 1 to close the game. Now, everybody wants to know why I decided to run the ball out at the end.
Hey, Tyvis, why'd you decide to run the ball out at the end?
Well, because, Dave, we were up 42-28. And I gave up this double move to, I can't think of it, something White. I can't think of what it is, DeAndre White or something like that. He hits a dig and go, and essentially they score on that. So my mind, Dave, I gave up 7 points. I owe this team 7 points.
You can get that back.
So fast forward to the last play. This is my opportunity. You get the pick, right? And you turn around and you see people on the ground. Oh, it's over. They got their heads down walking. I'm thinking to myself, they don't care. It's over with. They don't care. So I say this is a perfect opportunity to get my 7 points back. And they looked up and they got me. So yeah, that's what happened.
I love that so much. All right, so then you go to the national championship game. You're in Jerry's World, AT&T. I mean, the world is watching. You play Oregon, I believe what, Marcus Mariota. I mean, so
Did you feel like you guys basically, I mean, I know you don't think you win the game before you get there, but once you see what you did to Alabama, I assume there is no fear when you get the Ducks across from you.
It wasn't no fear of the Ducks. The only thing that the defense had on their mind was the tempo. 16 seconds. They said beat the 16. That was our motto for the whole week. You got to beat the 16. Meaning Oregon's going to come out, they're going to run a play. 16 seconds later, they're going to snap the ball and they're going to go again. So if you go back and watch the first quarter of that game, you'll see a defensive player make a play and everybody else on defense will get up, run to a spot and get ready, because in our mind, everything is going to go fast. And we figured out that if you get a stop on first down, they can't hurry up. So we started trying to win first down.
Yeah, right.
So they didn't do the tempo, so it would ease our minds. But going into that game, I remember being in the locker room and literally saying, this don't feel like the national championship game. You know, it felt like the Alabama game was the national championship. This is kind of like, it's the Pac. I will admit.
Say it, Tyvis.
I said the Pac-12 is soft. Like, come on, like
there we go.
They're soft. Like, I'm not worried about the Pac-12. Like,
there's my soundbite. I needed a soundbite.
They're soft.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, they ran the ball hard. Royce Freeman and Tyner, they ran the ball very physical, and they showed on the first drive. I think D. Lee might have got ran over a little bit, and they went down on that first drive and punched us right in the mouth, scored, and it woke everybody up. Everybody was like, "Whoa, okay, okay, it's over. Let's wake up because they're serious about this." And obviously, we went on to do great things.
Awesome stuff. I mean, so when you look back on it now, 10 years, I mean, can you believe it? Does it feel like 20? Does it feel like 5? A whole decade since you guys won that thing.
I mean, it do feel like a long time ago, but when I look back on it, I just think about all the great memories and the adversity that we face, and the fact that no matter what happens, like, we got each other's backs for the rest of our lives. You know, that's something that nobody can take away from us, and we kind of solidified our legacy in Ohio State, which is tough to do in this such prestigious program.
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, of all the great teams, it's hard to stand out. And you guys won the first ever college football playoff. Tyvis, thanks so much for coming in, man, talking about it.
No problem, man. Go Bucks.
It's here. The new edition of the Football Fever 2024. This game is unreal. Check out these new features. It's not just game day stuff. It's a ton of fun loaded with all your favorite Buckeye traditions. It even has Dynasty mode. Whoa. Now check out this team. The veteran quarterback surrounded by an all-star cast to break it all down. It's the only game you need this year. The Football Fever 2024. It's the perfect play. Saturday morning at 11 on ABC 6. Great stuff as always from Tyvis Powell, one of the most fun guys I've ever had the pleasure of covering. Now, I said at the top of the show, we're going to talk defense here at the end. Tyvis would love if we talk a little bit of defense. He was the MVP of that game against Oregon when they won it all. The defense so far has been lights out. And again, yes, back-to-back, Mac-to-Mac, I get it. Akron, Western Michigan, understood, point made. But they've scored 12 points and they've given up 6. When your defense is outscoring the other team's offense, that's going to be a problem. And this Buckeye defense is good enough. They are Tressel good. And if you have a Tressel good defense with a Ryan Day good offense, then the true potential of this team can be unlocked. I think the Buckeyes and Georgia seem like the clear cream of the crop in the country this year. This defense is that good. I asked Jack Sawyer after the game, how long can you guys outscore the other team's offense? And he said he started with an expletive, which Jack is one of my favorite players to cover, but you can't have the guy on live TV, at least not on ABC 6. Once we get, maybe on ABC 6 digital, can we get, a fourth or fifth digital channel where we can let Jack let the swear words fly? But anyway, Jack said, Blank, I don't know, man. I don't know. As long as we can. He was pumped. His Pick North Panthers beat Pick Central Friday night, so he was already riding some adrenaline there. But, yeah, Jack kind of laughed and said, as long as we can. And with the Buckeyes playing Marshall on the horizon, this defense just might outscore the other team's offense for the first 3 games of the season. Thanks again to Tyvis Powell for swinging by. We love Tyvis. We appreciate him every time he does. Thank you to you for not taking the bye week off with us and having fun here on episode 3 of the Buckeye Fever podcast. I'm Dave Holmes. We'll see you next week as the Bucs look to go 3-0 against the Thundering Herd.